Današnjeg bombardovanja NATO avijacije je bila i ratna prestolnica Republike Srpske, gdje ciljevi nisu...
Pale television tonight, the main news opened with pictures of NATO warplanes in action over Serb-held territory. The Serbs have had to face nothing like this and are reacting so far with defiance, not compliance. Neither side is expecting an early end to the violent confrontation between them. Sarajevo is used to being shaken by explosions, but not from friendly fire. The people of this besieged city were treated to the spectacle of the Bosnian Serbs at the receiving end of the most punitive attack ever launched by NATO in its history. Its other resorts to force, all Bosnia-related, were pinpricks compared to this. Both air and ground fire were used. The flashes in the dark on Mount Igman were from the French 155mm and British 105mm guns of the Rapid Reaction Force, in action for the first time to protect the people of a safe area, as well as the UN troops based there. So the city awoke to a new reality. The siege still in place, but the UN, through NATO, out-escalating the Serbs for the first time and trying to enforce its will on them. For 3.5 years, the city had waited for this. 3.5 years in which it was shelled and shattered and thousands of its people killed. The UN had tried and failed to silence the Serbs' heavy weapons by consent. It was now using force. Because of the fear of retaliation, the streets were all but deserted. The siren sounded and the Serbs did retaliate. But not yet on the scale that the people and the UN had feared. It was a reflex action in the early morning by the Serbs in the hills to the might of the Western alliance deployed against them. The air bombardment involved 60 warplanes, their first priority the jamming and destruction of the Bosnian Serbs' missile systems. That was the task from which the UN had flinched when it was challenged by the Serbs last November. What changed since then? Partly this, the outrage of 2 days ago when a single 120mm mortar shell killed 37 people in Sarajevo's main shopping street. And partly the impact of the London conference, the stated resolve to retaliate massively to save the remaining safe areas. It was time for the UN, through NATO, to respond to the Serbs as it had not responded before. When the mortar exploded last Monday, the UN Force Commander General Janvier was on holiday, and his authority was delegated to the Bosnia Commander General Smith at his headquarters here in Sarajevo. It was he who turned the key authorizing NATO action. That key, once turned, could hardly be turned back again. And so a reclusive British general let the guns do the talking for him. Intermittently through the day, the UN's artillery, the first ever on so-called peacekeeping duty, pounded away at the Serbs. The UN at its bases was on red alert, so cautious that even its daily press briefing was held for the first time underground in the basement of the PTT building, its first headquarters here. The result of the campaign so far?
We have yet to undertake what is called full battlefield damage assessment. We have very good means to do that, but initial reports from those involved of the damage and the effect on the other side is extensive.
The UN had warned General Mladic of what was coming.
And its basic message was that we have warned you of the consequences of an attack or a threat of an attack against a safe area, and unless the threat is removed, the NATO-UN operation will be ongoing.
For the people of this city, NATO's intervention might be the best news in years. People like Kanita Focek and her 6-year-old son Faris. Her husband was killed in the first month of the war. Faris has known little but war. So when she talked of seeking refuge in Italy, he asked her what the bomb shelters were like in Italy. Last night it was NATO's bombardment that kept them awake.
My son was a little bit scared when he wake up and hear this noise of explosion. He told me, "Oh, mother, I was afraid that whole Sarajevo will blow up," because he didn't know what it is. And when I explained him what is going on, I saw the shine in his eyes and smile on his face. Also, he has some kind of hope.
For the Bosnian Serbs, the perspective is very different. Tonight on television, they made the most of their successes, especially with the jets shot down, displayed as evidence of their determination to resist. Their commander, General Ratko Mladic, said, "NATO will not defeat us. We will not give up a square millimeter of our territory."
Not just on this front, but on every front line. We must be determined to defend our land.
The UN's Rapid Reaction Force on Mount Igman is involved tonight in warfighting as well as peacekeeping. The UN believes the Serbs may react with severity, but it lives in hope. But from what you know of the Serbs, defiance is in their nature, isn't it?
It is, but we have been hearing slightly more conciliatory notes coming out of their camp in the last couple of months. I think in particular the loss of the Krajinas in Croatia might have affected their sensibilities, and I think they may be more susceptible to something.
The people of Sarajevo are also caught between hope and apprehension. They know the Serbs as enemies in a way that the United Nations and NATO do not. But they're also getting the help they have long campaigned for.
I'm always optimist in some way. I don't hate anybody. I don't want anybody even to be killed. But this is the chance for the world to stop this in some way, to tell when it's enough.
What happened on this street 2 days ago has shaken the city, given its people some hope, and set the United Nations apparently on a collision course with the Serbs. It is possible that the UN's initiative will make the safe area safer. It hasn't happened yet.
Martin.